Hello, everyone, and welcome to Snap Take. This is Glazer of Snap Judgments, and today, as always, we have four great decks for you. I think we've actually figured out Captain Carter. I think the first day we were playing her in the wrong shells. I don't think she's amazing, but I do think we have the right decks. Two decks that I have had a lot of success with that I'm going to share with you. But before we get to those decks, the thumbnail deck in these videos is always the second deck, and we always have at least three new decks, usually four. We're going to kick it off with the deck that is currently ranked 1 on the Infinite Leaderboard. This is Zune's Thanos. You might remember Zunes from being the #1 player twice in Marvel Snap history. He's all of, I believe, 15 years old. He might have actually turned 16 by now. But he's a Marvel Snap prodigy, and he has come back to Marvel Snap. He's apparently on break from school once more and is #1 again with this Thanos list, which is quite the list. We've seen similar lists lately from players like Crazy, another multiple time #1 player, and Pluto, but this one is the current #1 list, so I thought it was worth taking a look at and looking at what makes it so strong. You can find Zunes on Twitter, not Twitch, at Zunes0122. This deck needs Thanos, Mockingbird, and Goliath. Those are fundamentally your almost always in Thanos decks. Once in a while they go without a Goliath, but Mockingbird being basically a free 9 is too much to do without. And I think Goliath is really important in the meta right now as people are doing a lot of silly Iron Man-ish shenanigans at the end, and having an Goliath to really turn that off is game winning. Gorgon, Iron Patriot, and Sam are all good cards. We'll talk about their uses later, but they're perfectly replaceable. Those are literally just two of the best two drops in the game, Iron Patriot and Sam, and Gorgon as a way to sort of win mirrors and mess with opponents. Cable, Quake, Lizard, and Lizard if you add Enchantress or Luke Cage to the list. Goliath is really fine if you add some more ongoing because a lot of the stones are ongoing cards. Wiccan can be Luna Snow, Fastos, or Hope. Those are basically all the energy rampers in the game. You do want an energy ramper with Thanos. Wiccan is the most powerful of the energy rampers in the game, but also one of the less reliable ones. Legion here is great for scamming victories. He's basically free wins. Vision, Claw, and Enchantress are your possible replacements there. And Red Guardian, Rocket Groot can be Luke, Negasonic, Gladiator, so on and so forth. All right, let's go card by card. So Gorgon is here as a tech card. This deck actually runs a reasonable number of tech cards. We have Gorgon, we have Mobius, we have Red Guardian, and we have Shang-Chi, and to at least some extent Goliath as all tech cards in this list. Gorgon is saying, is my opponent running Arishem? Is my opponent running Thanos? If they don't see Mobius, I get a free snap, I get a free win. That is obviously an extremely valuable situation to put yourself in for just a spot that you don't have a card that you really love. So you run the extra tech cards to give yourself a leg up in certain matchups. One of those matchups is because Iron Patriot is so popular right now, being able to make that Iron Patriot card one more expensive is very strong, especially because Iron Patriot was recently nerfed and now gives one less in reduction. Iron Patriot is still a very good card and thus makes the list. Iron Patriot into a Rocket and Groot, Iron Patriot into a Mockingbird, which is a play that is made possible, although not likely, by various locations and such. But Iron Patriot is just a generally speaking very powerful card, one worth running, because the upside of winning that location is a potential snap condition. Sam Wilson is one of the two cards, at least in my opinion, that is in the argument for the best card in the game, and thus he makes the list. His presence, he makes Mockingbird start the game as a 5/9, which is obviously wonderful, while also potentially being played on turn 2 as a 2/8 in power. Sam is great. Mobius, meanwhile, is your counter card. You must fundamentally run Mobius in almost every Thanos list right now because Gorgon is a card and Mobius turns off Gorgon. You don't really want your stones to cost 2. You basically lose that game every time. Mobius says no thank you to that, while also just frustrating opponents who are doing certain things, like that Sandman deck that JD McDonaldino played that's still around, and frustrating certain locations. You play a Mobius and Elysium has turned up, that is a potential snap, for example. Red Guardian is incredible right now. You might have noticed that a lot of ongoing is all over the meta. Red Guardian is very good at hitting Iron Man and making that go away. It's also just an incredibly strong card. If you're seeing a lot of discard hitting a Bullseye, is incredibly strong hitting a Mobius, hitting a Dracula, so on and so forth. Red Guardian is a great card, and thus here. Wrecker and Groot is another of the top 5-ish cards in Marvel Snap. It is the go-to 3-drop. It seems like there's always one 3-drop that just rises above the rest. Right now, that is Rocket and Groot, who fundamentally what he does is he becomes like a 3/5 immediately, a 3/7 relatively quickly, and then he sort of prevents your opponents from playing in certain locations. Thus, at the end of the game, when you're able to move him, they only have 1 or 2 places left to play, and you're able to win a lot of power. Shang is a last turn play. Power must be controlled. I don't know how to explain Shang, so it's always just going to be that. Sorry. Wiccan is incredible. It's if Wiccan works and you have a lot of low cost stuff cards here, in addition to the 3 2s and 3 3s, you have 6 1s because of Thanos. You're fairly likely to get Wiccan off when you see him. If you do see him, you've basically won the game most of the time. Wiccan lets you go so far over the top of Thanos, it's insane. 4 6 is decent stats as well for when it doesn't work. Legion gives you scam ability. I guess Legion count as a control card too. You see a location that really either benefits your opponent or can really benefit you. You can make it be everywhere. Turning the location that gives, for example, plus power to 1 cost cards for a Thanos deck is incredibly strong. Being able to turn off things like Limbo is incredible. There's a lot to like about Legion and his abilities. Goliath says, I'm going to slam that door. My opponent's going to try and drop a MODOK. Clearly here, no, they're not. My opponent's going to try and drop an Iron Man here or a Mystique here. No, they're not. That's incredible, and it's fairly easy to get initiative with a Thanos list. Mockingbird is fundamentally a snap condition when she gets free if your opponent doesn't have Mobius. You're able to do powerful things that the opponents will really struggle to keep up with. If you can play at the end of the game a Mockingbird plus like an Goliath, plus a Thanos, plus a Legion, plus a Shang, opponents will almost always really struggle for that matchup, especially if you got like an early Rocket Groot or Sam for extra power. And then finally, Thanos is obviously here largely for the stones, which make Mockingbird free, which draw cards. But Thanos starting in hand right now is so much better than it's ever been because A, it's an extra draw, but B, if you see Time Stone and the Soul Stone in particular, what Thanos offers you is the ability to be played on turn 5 for 12, which is about as big as a 5 gets in Marvel Snap, while also being Shang proof, which is just incredible. That means you can play him on a Death's Domain. You can play him on a Sanctum if you play Space Stone. That extra stuff, those extra uses, give you an awful lot of snap equity. This is again rank 1. Turn 1, you want Draw Rocks. Turn 2, you play Iron Patriot if a win, or Gorgon if the opponent has extra cards in their deck. There's also Sam is perfectly fine, or you can draw. Generally speaking, if I have 2 draw stones, I will play 2 draw stones. If I don't have good follow-ups, if I don't have Wiccan in hand, for example, if I do have a good curve, then I will play Sam and just hold the draw for later. Turn 3, Rocket Groot is generally speaking my play. That's better than Mobius. You can also play a 2+1, and from here on out, you're looking to Mockingbird when you can. Remember, Mockingbird starts at 5, so if you played a stone on 1 and at least 1 stone on 2, she is now playable on 3. Turn 4, you want Wiccan. If you can get Wiccan off, you snap. For anyone new here, the color coding here is yellow is just a regular play. Green means that this is a snap condition when it works, and white means it's, I guess Mobius should be green, excuse me. And white means a generally speaking snap condition. You should be looking to aggressively snap these plays. If you get a Wiccan curve in a deck that runs Wiccan, you should almost always be snapping. It is incredibly, incredibly strong. Turn 4, you want Wiccan over any of your earlier plays. Turn 5, you're playing Thanos. Again, ideally with the key stones here, you're going to need either Wiccan or Soul Stone here, or to know your opponent's not playing Shang. And if not, you can play Legion. Legion is a scam card here. If you can close off locations, there's that location that no one can play anything on turn 6. You could still potentially play your Thanos if you play the Space Stone, though, right? You can still move your Rocket Groot if that'll win a location. Stuff like that is a very powerful play. So is giving everything +5 to Shang off a surprise location, that kind of thing. Then turn 6 is Goliath or Shang Plus, and then you should be able to win the game. This is again a really cool and powerful list. Props to Zunes for coming back to the game and immediately reclaiming the #1 spot. Props, kid, way to go. All right, please hit that sub, like, and comment if you are willing to. It would really mean a lot in helping us get to our goal of 25,000 subs in 2025. We are 200 subs from 20,000. It's unbelievable. Help us get there. We'll give you 7 days a week of Marvel Snap videos. Tomorrow's video is the top 10 decks in Marvel Snap with detail you can't get anywhere else. In addition, we're giving away a Captain Carter on every video this week. We will be announcing those around Sunday, so all you have to do is sub, like, and then leave a comment. I'll tell you what comment later this video. If you do that on every video this week, someone in the comments to every single video this week will win a Captain Carter. Please make sure that you are entered and have your best chance at winning that card. If you want Captain Carter, sub, like, and then later on this video, I'll tell you what comment. All right. Sko Denim has a Captain Carter list that I had a massive amount of success with. I started today thinking Captain Carter was a complete dud. Straight up, I thought this card was completely terrible. And then I do top player thoughts. We'll get to my top player thoughts on Captain Carter right after this deck, where I ask a bunch of top 100 players, top content creators, some of the best players in Marvel Snap, what they think of Captain Carter. And then They tell me, and I present that to you. It's part of my way to help us figure out what we do in order to buy the cards. We're going to do the same thing with Goliath later this video. So I started going, I don't like Captain Carter. The highest win rate deck with her is still that Doom deck from day one. In fact, if you auto build a Doom deck in Marvel Snap, it's going to give you my deck right now, which is pretty cool. So it's going to give you the Doom 2099 deck that I created for day one for this card. Because I don't know if you know this, but the auto deck builder doesn't actually know how to build decks. It just pulls decks from its data from the database of things people have played. So that is right now, as of at least last I checked a couple hours ago, the highest win rate Captain Carter deck. And I was like, fine, it's good in Doom 2099, but it's not really impressive anywhere else, and that's kind of disappointing for a season pass card. Then I got a few people, Scott, Splat, and Safety, being like, this card is a sleeper. This card really, really has some legs. So I haven't tested the Safety Blade list yet. I'm going to test it tomorrow, so we're not going to show that. We are going to show the Scott and Splat ones, which I tested, and Captain Carter's a really, really good role player in these decks. She's not required and she's not amazing, but she is very, very good. Plus, the 700 cold Captain Carter variant is sort of badass. I had a really good time with this list, and we're going to take a look at it. This is Scott's, as well, most successful Captain Carter list. You can find Scott on either SnapFan, where he is the head writer, or on Twitter at twitter.com/ScoDenim. He is an amazingly kind person, and one I cannot urge you enough to follow. I'm going to say this now because every time I do promote SnapFan, someone's like, but I know I write from Marvel Snap Zone. I think that a million people do, or not a million, a bunch of people do absolutely amazing, amazing work in the Marvel Snap space. And Scott is at the absolute top of that list as far as some of the best Marvel Snap content creators and writers around. And hopefully you read me on Marvel Snap Zone. Hopefully you read Dan on Marvel Snap Zone. But you should absolutely also be reading Scott on SnapFan. Getting a plurality of high level opinions and content will make you better at the game. It is also really entertaining. This deck needs two cards. It needs both Wiccan and Galacta. Both of those are absolute requirements. Kate Bishop can be Penny or Domino. I don't suggest running this without Kate, but that's how I would do it. Iron Patriot can be Sam Wilson, Cable, or Armor. Those are all, Iron Patriot and Sam Wilson can be Cable or Armor. Armor is not great here because you are running Shang, but you could instead run Enchantress at that point. Red Guardian and Rocket can be Juggernaut, Luke, Negasonic. Basically pick your poison as far as good threes go. You do want to keep a clear curve because you're running Wiccan. And then Gwenpool or Captain Carter can be Enchantress, Juggernaut as our main replacements. Enchantress obviously contradicts a bit with Captain Carter. Juggernaut is the single card I would most like to add to this list. You run Quicksilver in this list for one reason. You run Quicksilver so you don't have to run ones for Galacta. That's it. It's perfectly fine here. Quicksilver is not, however, the one you always want to play. You are always playing Zabu over Quicksilver. You are running a ridiculous amount of force in this list. You are running Captain Carter, Shang-Chi, Galacta, Gwenpool, and Wiccan. Being able to play any of those but Shang-Chi on turn 3 is a huge, huge boon. Being able to double up 2 of those toward the end of the game or play one of those with the 2-drop on turn 5 is a huge, huge boon to the list. Zabu is your absolute priority card early and will be played over Quicksilver. At that point, you don't have to play Quicksilver, but he is a nice way to fill out a curve. Should like a +1 extra energy location turn up, should you only have a 2-drop on turn 3, that kind of play works really well. The other thing Zabu really offers you here, though, is that on turn 2, you feel like you have to play Kate Bishop if you don't have a 3, but if you played Zabu and haven't drawn Wiccan yet, if you do draw a Wiccan, guess what? He's going to cost 3, and now you don't have to worry about playing Kate. You can play a more effective Iron Patriot or Sam Wilson on turn 2. Kate's purpose here is, in fact, largely for that Wiccan. What Kate does when you play her is says, I don't need a 3 as long as I've seen a 2. In fact, reasonably often I was drawing Zabu on turn 3, and then I would just play Arrow, Arrow, Zabu on turn 3. It's a little cloggy, it's not an ideal play, but it does keep your Wiccan curve alive relatively effectively. Iron Patriot is great. I don't know how many different ways I can say Iron Patriot is a snap condition who's really strong, but he is. Sam Wilson is also really good. Sam Wilson has extra synergy with Captain Carter. No, the shield doesn't work. It would not shock me if the buff to Captain Carter was that the shield eventually does work there. I'm not sure they want to make Sam Wilson, already one of the best cards in the game, better, so we'll see. But what Sam does do is gives you an extra way to make sure that Captain Carter ends up in the front row without having to completely give up on a lane, because the shield can be moved out, letting Captain Carter move to the front, giving her the ability to buff 2 cards, which is very strong. That's why he's here. He's going to be in a lot of Captain Carter decks literally for that reason. Red Guardian's an amazing tech card and thus goes in a ton of decks right now. Again, Bullseye is all over the place. Turning off Bullseye is a win. Rocket Raccoon is, again, one of the top 5 cards in the game. It's amazing as a follow-up to a Galacta Gwenpool. It's amazing with a after a Wiccan. It's also amazing on turn 3 to get Iron Patriot going. Its movability lets you win cards. Its movability helps you make sure that Captain Carter ends the game in a front row. If you played a Captain Carter in the back behind an Iron Patriot Rocket Groot, later on you just move the Rocket Groot and your power is fixed. Captain Carter is here because fundamentally she's a 4/9 almost always in this list. You do have enough stuff between the arrows and Iron Patriots to make her have that power. But in addition, you can hit her with Gwenpool or Galacta to make her significantly bigger. If she's a 4/6, then she's fundamentally giving, instead of a 4/9, she's a 4/15. It's insane. That's a lane winning play. Giving her even that +2 power from Gwenpool is huge for similar reasons. There's enough locations that make her good that this list is very good for her. Is she better than Galacta in this list? No. Is she better than Gwenpool in this list? Probably not. But she is still very good and worth running. Shang over Enchantress is rough here. It's largely because of Captain Carter, but especially with the current hot location of everything getting +5, Shang is great. Plus, there's suddenly a lot of Red Skull. We'll talk about that deck later, and Shang answers a lot of problems for the list. This list is also decent. You can keep Captain Carter in the back until later in the game. Really good at throwing priority, and then hitting things like Docking with Shang is game winning. Galacta is another one of the 5 best cards of the game. Her nerf did even less than Iron Patriots. This is probably the right power and cost for her, but she's incredible. Hitting basically anything with her is game winning. Getting her on turn 3 is basically game winning. Gwenpool can be rough because you don't always end up playing every card in the deck, and you can feel forced to play what Gwenpool hits, especially she'll sometimes give you like a 2/7 Sam Wilson that you wouldn't otherwise play at the end of the game, but like, so be it. She's just enough power that you feel like you have to run her, at least till Kahoria comes out. I can see this list cutting her for Kahoria in a week. And Wiccan gives you enough energy to really, really go over the top. Wiccan remains a snap condition. If you're putting up that much power, that much energy with these control cards, you can usually win when you figure out a Wiccan, and thus Wiccan is here. Wiccan is not a card that loves me. He very rarely showed up for me in my games. I think I got him off exactly once. Um, no, I got him off twice, and one was a loss. I got in the games we played. The one win was just a retreat from the opponent. I believe that was our friend Chamo, and the loss was to freaking Shuri Enjoyer, who managed to get in one lane a Ms. Marvel, a Sarah, and a Onslaught with magic. So I did the thing and ran away there. But like, Wiccan is generally a snap condition. When the opponent drops the nut after Wiccan, you run. It's fine. You lose 2 instead of 1. You'll be okay. But like, the extra you get from usually when you win with Wiccan is worth more. So again, this is Scott's most successful version of the list, and then I went up 10-2, which is an 83% win rate, including that ridiculous loss I told you about, which is just like a game you lose in Marvel Snap. Turn 1, you want Zabu over Quicksilver. Zabu can be a snap if you have a fairly clear curve, or if you have all the 4s in your deck, but be careful with it. Sometimes you're just not going to draw 4s, you're going to draw Wiccan without the curve, and that's really frustrating. Turn 2, Kate, if no 3, or you can still drop Zabu here. Like, Zabu is just so good, I will still drop Zabu. If necessary, like sometimes you get that +1 energy thing or whatever. You can also do Iron Patriot if it wins, or Sam, and you should have a relatively clear idea if you can win an Iron Patriot. Are you going to be able to get priority for Rocket and Groot? Do you have a 4 to follow up immediately? Did you draw 4 after Zabu? Those will help you win that location. Turn 3, if you can Wiccan, Galacta, or Gwenpool, you should snap. Captain Carter is not a snap on turn 3, but she is very good on that turn. It's just once she's on the board, there's not really a way to buffer. You should know at that point, however, there's a location to buffer. Rocket and Groot is obviously a really good play, in many ways almost as good as Captain Carter here, and then you can always play a 2/1. Rocket and Groot is better if you played Iron Patriot, by the way. Turn 4 is the same as 3. You will snap at this point, either Wiccan or Galacta. Gwenpool is no longer a clear snap, unless you played Wiccan, but then you should have snapped already anyway, right? Turn 5, Galacta or Gwenpool plus, and then turn 6, Shang, Red Guardian, whatever has the most stats on the board. I think this list is stellar. I don't know what else to say. This sort of good stuff season pass full list is really strong. I think putting Captain Carter into the ongoing shells that are running like Spectrum along with Anti-Venom and stuff was a mistake. Those decks sort of get eaten alive by Super Scroll, they get eaten alive by Enchantress, but in this type of shell, I think she puts up real power in like very, very effective ways. Right? Like, even at the end of the game, if you've got a rocket location that already has Sam Wilson, Rocket, and the Shield, You move the shield and rocket, you drop Captain Carter, and you drop a card behind her. If that was hit by a Galactic, if that's hit by a Gwenpool, you just turned a lane that didn't look that threatening into a huge win. It's a really, really cool card. Our thoughts for Captain Carter. We're going to kick it off with Safety Blade because Safety is the one who actually I think really convinced me here. It's going to suffer from, oh, it's just mid first week syndrome. Then some will realize she's just pure stats with potential blowout upside. Because there are locations and situations where she ends up a blowout card. Doubling buffs, which she fundamentally does, right? Because she's going to give those buffs to the back row and then again, because she's hitting both cards, is insanely strong. That pure stats upside, I think, is where she lives, which also makes her a challenge, especially with Kahori coming out, because at that 4-cost spot, we have Galacta, we have Gwenpool, we'll have Kahori, we have Ms. Marvel. Roram says crap, Captain Carter crap. He wanted the alliteration, so here it is. Heart of the cards, Roram finished number 12 in the Infinite Leaderboard last season. He's a wonderful streamer. You can find at Roram Plays. Heart of the Cards has recently started streaming. He's a newer player who's a surfer player who finished like 7 on the Infinite Leaderboard last season. Captain Carter seems weak. Ongoing was her home, but she isn't the best in slot, which I think is very true. It's just, I think Hart needs to play it in Surfer. Blue Tears says Captain Carter's okay right now. It's going to take some time to find her best home. I do like her in Sasquatch Buff list and in Zoo list I'm playing with. So we don't have that Sasquatch or Zoo. But we do actually have the Sasquatch, which just I haven't. She's bugged right now with Mysterio, where she won't buff the Mysterio play behind her, so I don't like that list. We'll take a look at those lists as things get worked out for her ability. Blue Tears just won Snap Judgment League Season 5, spoiler, but is also a general top 100 player, and which is especially impressive as he's a Conquest main. So Blue Tears does have some really good homes for her. Ika, one of the best deck builders of the game, says that card is close to dead on arrival. Really fun as a Galacta follow-up, but too many better 4-costs. I'm not sure I agree here, but Ika is brilliant, so hey, gotta respect it. Toxic Soul King says Carter's the worst season pass card from the last 5 or 6 seasons, and she's kind of slow, and I don't like her. So it's worth noting that she is in fact almost guaranteed the worst season pass card since Symbiote Spider-Man, but I don't think she's as bad as Symbiote Spider-Man. I think she's a good card in a land of really great cards. I'm not sure she's much worse than Agamotto. I think Agamotto is better, but I think they're on the same level. Sko Denim, who we just heard from, says Captain Carter is fun and really good. She usually plays out for good value for a 4-cost and is sometimes huge. I think that she's basically almost always good and occasionally like completely busted is pretty solid. Honifer, who is again top 10 on the Infinite Leaderboard last season and has been number 2 previously, says mediocre to bad, potential buff target. If they buff her, she's going to be broken, so fair warning. Smiles, a surfer main who's been around the top 10 of the Infinite Leaderboard multiple times, says Captain Carter, an effective 4-9 with only 2 turns to make it a 4-9. That 4-9 happen is just not up to the power level of other cards. Sure, buffing her is good, but that leaves you with less time to fill her condition. The card is pretty weak in terms of strength output. Cougar says Captain Carter is cope. Well, to the alliteration. Cougar is number 4 in the Infinite Leaderboard last season, has been 10 a few times. Salty, number 6 last season, says needs to find a home, and I think we might be finding those homes. The Great Lambie, one of the best players in the history of Marvel Snap, says her cost makes her perfectly not that good. The issue is that she costs 4 and she can't cost 3 because Surfer. However, let's keep that in mind for a few more minutes. Scream Connoisseur, a player who is in the top 20 last season with Scream, says Captain Carter is trash, makes ongoing even more predictable. Agreed. I think she's bad in ongoing. Jimmy Dickens, another top player, another Snap fan writer, says just kinda sucks. She's not big enough to justify her slot and is super awkward as a 4-cost that needs to be in the front row. It almost never feels good playing her. Fair enough. Den, the Marvel Snap Zone head writer, so we have 2 Snap fan and 2 Snap Zone writers. I guess 3 if you count me for Snap Zone, right? Says good when it works, but a magnet for Enchantress and Magneto. That's really important to note. Those are going to be really popular this week, but the way Marvel Snap's card releases go, within a week or 2 more, those won't be nearly as possible, and then we'll have a reevaluation, which is sort of what Safety is saying. Zenade, who finished number 11 last season, Captain Carter requires too much investment and is awkward to fill a curve with, needing her to be played early, front row, next to buffers, best ones probably being Blue Marvel and Captain America Spectrum, then also filling back row. Seems like too convoluted of a process to get from one card. So I do think it's bad with Blue Marvel. I'm not sure if it's bad with Captain America. There might be an ongoing Surfer. We're going to have to explore that down the line. Danish says, the Helamine, who's often near the top of the leaderboard, says Captain Carter seems to be outshined by Moonstone as a 4-cost ongoing cards. Win one lane real good, though. Fair. W, one of the all-time best deck builds in the game, says fine, but sort of underwhelming. I think that's a fine take. And Splat says, I'm enjoying Carter a lot, especially with Brood. And that Brood list is what we're actually going to look at now. This is Splat's Surfer Brood. I had a lot of success with this. I had a 70% or so win rate with this in a bunch of games. I used this from 85 to 93, and then I played a couple games with it. I was getting a little bored, and I switched it up to the Skull list. Actually, I played some other stuff and didn't do especially well, and then I dropped a couple ranks, and then I played the Skull list back up to 95. I would hit Infinite, but then my family came home, such as life. I'll hit Infinite on stream tomorrow. Splat Surfer is this list, and I looked at this and I went, there's no way I'm going to enjoy this list. I'm doing nothing early on the hope that I have enough power late to win. I have enough power late to win, y'all. This deck is really good. You can find Splat at twitch.tv/Splaticus. Splat is awesome. Please do go check out my friend Splat. He rocks. He has the coolest, craziest builds in the game. This deck needs both Galacta and Shaw. Those are your two required cards. You do need Shaw because Shaw is such a power spike, in particular with the Galacta and Gwenpool here, along with Surfer, that it allows you to win games you would otherwise have a hard time with. Sam can be Iron Patriot or Forge, although once more, Sam has real value with Captain Carter. Captain Carter or Gwenpool can be Absorbing Man, and this list will still, generally speaking, work. In fact, the real problem is it might actually be better with Absorbing Man than either Captain Carter or Gwenpool. Absorbing Man just pretty good to follow up Brood or to give you a double Surfer. Cool. Let's keep going. Card by card. You're running, again, Captain Carter, Shang, Enchantress, Galacta, Gwenpool. That's 5 fours. You need Zabu. If you get Zabu, hit a couple fours, and have Sarah, you're going to have a real good time. So enjoy that. But you do really need Zabu. Zabu, you will play 1 or 2 over Sam anytime. Sam gives you that extra value that we kept discussing with Captain Carter, but you're playing it little enough in this deck that that's not usually a huge problem, so don't overstress it. It's just a 2/8's a lot of points, and having that lot of points early it really does help your slow early game. You will occasionally play Brood early if you have Surfer or a key location, but generally speaking, you would like to hit Brood with Galacta or Gwenpool, or play a Captain Carter before you play Brood. Captain Carter will give the two back row Broods, make them 5 power. The front Brood will not get the buff, but that's totally fine because it's not like you don't run Surfer, or you can't hit that with a Gwenpool or Galacta even before you do those things. Brood, pretty good. Surfer is your buff. You don't have a million Surfer cards, which actually hurt a couple times. I would like to down the line end up cutting Shangar and Enchantress. I'm not sure if now's the time, but I think at some point one of those is going to become Rock and Groot to give me an extra early play. But my big problem with this list is once in a while I just didn't have enough threes. It ends up working out mostly fine though. Then we have Juggernaut. Juggernaut is your lane winner at the end of the game. He lets you win for low investment without needing much buff or otherwise. Shaw has too many good targets. Shaw doesn't do anything with Captain Carter, but is too good with Galactic, Gwenpool, and Surfer to not be here. If you're running Galacta and Gwenpool and Surfer, you have to run Shaw. He just gets ungodly big fairly often, and there's enough locations that really benefit him too. Captain Carter is here largely for Brood. She is mostly a Brood card here, but she's good enough with Brood to be worth running here. I like her better than either Shang or Enchantress. Again, I'm just not sure which. Again, I think the other should probably be Rock and Groot. Shang and Enchantress are here largely for the current meta. They let you answer everything, and people don't ever expect them from Surfer decks, which is a giant cube stealer. Galacta is arguably your most important card here. Buffing Carter, buffing Brood, buffing Shaw, buffing basically anything by 3 makes it a real threat. That's it. Enchantress is here for this week. I bet you she goes away after it, but she stops Captain Carter, she stops Goliath, and thus she makes a lot of sense. Gwenpool is your backup Galacta fundamentally. It doesn't give you the targeting Galacta does, which is a problem. I could easily see this becoming Kahori, especially in a deck that sort of keeps its hand full like this does once that Kahori is out. But Gwenpool for now is a must-have. It hits Shaw, you're pretty happy. It hits Brood, you're pretty happy. It hits Captain Carter, you're pretty happy. It hits Shang, you're a little annoyed. And Sarah is required because you see the curve here, right? Sarah is an absolute requirement because the curve here is absolutely through the roof. If you hit Sarah, though, this feels suddenly real good. All right, so Splat went 24 and 8 with this. I had a 70% win rate, and then Splat went 24 and 6 with this, and that was in Infinite. This is an 80% win rate in Infinite. That's real impressive, y'all. This deck starts with Zabu, and will then play Zabu over Sam. Turn 3 is a 4. You don't want that to be Enchantress for Shang, so one of the other 4s over Brood over Shaw. Turn 4, Galacta over Gwenpool over Agent Carter, and you're probably snapping those. Although you don't have to snap Agent Carter, you're almost always snapping Galacta or Gwenpool. Turn 5 is Sarah. You should also snap Sarah, but you should have snapped if you had Sarah when you had Galacta or Gwenpool. If you have Galacta, Gwenpool, and not Sarah, it's rough. If you're going to you can go Galacta into Gwenpool into 3/3 just fine, or Gwenpool into Galacta into 3/3 just fine. It should be Galactic to Gwenpool to 3/3 if you have both, though. Then turn 6 is whatever else you have left that is powerful. Because you have Galactic Gwenpool, Captain Carter, and because you can reasonably often play all three, you can just often drop a Brood and a Shaw on the last turn without having to do a lot of other shenanigans there, or one of those two cards and a Juggernaut and win the game. It's really strong. It does not seem like it works, but I promise it does. I had a lot of success with it, and the stats for this one speak for themselves. When Splat's playing a deck this normal, you know it must be good. So go check this one out, please. I am very, very impressed. Come check out a stream tonight. I should be live around 8:30 p.m. Eastern. I've got to finish my Infinite Climb. I've got 5 ranks to go, so come join me and watch. In addition, if you'd like to win that season pass from today's video, it is not the last one. What's the best card in Marvel Snap right now? Answer in the comments in order to win a season pass. I think the real contenders are Sam Wilson, are Scream, my personal pick, are Shang-Chi, are Rocket and Groot. So Red Guardian, I think those are the real contenders. If you have a different one, say what it is, and extra bonus points for anyone who presents an argument. See you on stream. We'll discuss. All right, let's talk Goliath before we talk about our last deck. We're not going to do a Goliath deck today. I think we hit the best Goliath deck yesterday, and I don't want a filler deck, and there's not really another place for it. Although there's okay Thanos stuff, I don't think it's very good there yet. We'll get to that list relatively soon. So turn one. First person is Roram, who we talked about already. Goliath, good. Again, he wanted the alliteration. Heart of the card says Goliath seems strong, but niche. So far, he's great and ongoing, and not so much elsewhere. Given his text, that makes perfect sense. Ika says Goliath, boring, but good stats wins games. Yep, sounds right. Toxic Soul King says Goliath is on average a 2/6. Really good and really strong card and medium archetype. So I think important to note that I think his low side is 2/6. I think on average he's more like a 2/8, at least in the right decks. Denish says Goliath seems great. Ongoing can always use more cheap options, and he's a big one. Aber says Goliath is a perfect addition to the ongoing team. Cheap, strong, and of course, dies to Enchantress. Fair enough. Safety, Goliath is really strong, but only in ongoing decks, but I'll never play an ongoing deck without him ever again. It's high praise. Scott Denham says Goliath is ridiculously good. Definitely a staple and a card people who don't get it will be constantly asking what can replace him. He's replaceable with Lizard if you run Luke, but he's better, so you should probably just have him. Smile says Goliath, the card is legit great. Moonstone Spectrum list, the card is regularly 2, 8, or 9. He has a very narrow use case, but he's certainly one of the best cards in that slot. Honifer says this seems very good, a new staple for the ongoing deck that was kind of underrated already. Fair. Cougar just says Goliath good. Apparently Cougar and Roram really like alliteration. Salty says Goliath is really strong in ongoing decks. Yeah. Scream Connoisseur, Goliath is a good card. You now have 2 good 2-drops together with Sam, and I think him with Sam is kind of the point here. You don't have Sam, Goliath's value goes way down. Blue Tears says Goliath is a very strong card for ongoing lists, and I also like him as Zoo list. I'm playing with Captain Carter, but if you like any of the ongoing shells, you definitely want to pick him up. Great take. W says mildly more impressed by Goliath. That card can get big. Speaking of big, Jimmy Dickens says Goliath is the opposite. Fantastic and easy to play in lots of shells. Very valuable card for a collection, in my opinion. And Den says good, but limited to certain decks. That's basically everyone being positive on that card. Don't know what else to tell you. Our last deck is the Sauron 10s list. Owie did a video on it a couple days ago. No one knows who made this list. I've asked everyone. This list just sort of showed up on Untapped a couple hours after the Sauron buff and has since been slightly refined to add Shang-Chi, and it's just a really, really strong list. You can feel free to cut either, I wouldn't cut a chance. You can feel free to cut Shang for another 410 if you are so inclined, but this is just the points list. You can find Owie playing this if you speak French in particular, twitch.tv/Owie. He's also, if you type in Owie Marvel Snap on YouTube, he makes videos too with this list. This needs Star and Scarbrand. It is built for those 2 cards. Ares can be Cull or Crossbones, basically another 410. So, Zabu is here because you're running 4 4s. I don't know if you're noticing a pattern, but if we're running 4 or 5 4s, we really, really want Zabu. 0 is basically your backup Sauron. If you don't see Sauron, you can spend turn 2 or 3 going 0 Maw, 0 Lizard, 0 Starbrand. That is all fine. You can also 0 Typhoid or Red Skull, as the case may be, and that all works out fine. It's a backup plan, but it's fine. Maw is completely freaking insane with Sauron. 1/7 is way too much stats, but it's great. So if you see Sauron, you should absolutely be playing Ebony Maw. You will be very happy you do. Sauron is a ton of power in this list. Ebony Maw, who can only be played after turn 3, then locks a location, being just a straight 1/7 is wild. Turns Lizard from potential 2/2 up to back at 2/6. Says turns Starbrand from a 3/4 to a 3/10. Lets you play other cards with Typhoid Mary. And if an opponent fills a Red Skull location, he's giving them 8 freaking power. That makes that 2/14 a much less impressive. What is that? 2/6? Sorry, 5/6. So what this card fundamentally says is what this card fundamentally says is these cards go from terrible to amazing. So it's a 2/2 that plays for like 30 stats. Lizard is just good stats. You can play it early. You can Enchantress it to pop its power back up. If you're going to do that, play it with like your Starbrands and your Typhoids in order to make that happen. Although be a little careful with Typhoid because you do want to get Scar cheap. Uh, Lizard, Starbrand. I don't know how to talk about these one by one. Lizard, Starbrand, Typhoid, Red Skull. Those are your cards that Sauron hits or zero hits, or you can hit with Enchantress. Although you can't hit with Maul with Enchantress, only zero. Worth noting. Shang says, "Oh, my opponent thought they were cute and getting too big. No, they're not." Enchantress not only has the offensive ability this week with everyone running ongoing everywhere, it can turn off all of those ongoing cards that are problems. Your list is freaking huge, so Ares is freaking huge. And then Scar is fairly often. Let's say you go Sauron into Starbrand, into Typhoid, into Red Skull. That's -6. That's a 1 cost Scar. You can now play that Scar with an Enchantress, with a Shang-Chi, with whatever you want, or with another big 10 power card. That all seems pretty damn good, right? So this is one of the highest win rate decks in the game. It's really good, and no one's really talking about it, so it's worth looking into. It would surprise me if this didn't end up making our top 10 list. Turn 1, you want Zebu. Turn 2, Sauron over Zebu, over Zero Maul, or 0 for Starbrand/Lizard. Sorry, or 0 for Starbrand, or 0 for Lizard, but not as good. Or you can just play Lizard. Turn 3, we'll still play Sauron at a 1 over anything else. That's better than Starbrand, which is better than Ares. Turn 4, you want Ares or Mary. Turn 6, you want Red Skull or Scar, and then turn 6, you're going to go Scar and Shang or Scar and Enchantress, and then you should be able to win because you just played 8 billion power and still had room for one of 2 super powerful control cards. Really, really good list, really straightforward. If you're just looking to put some points down and gain some power, go for it. Have at thee, friend. If you'd like to see some gameplay from these lists outside of me, check out the stream team. Today is Thursday, so the King of Canada will be live around noon. Go check out our friend, the King of Canada, and say happy belated birthday to our friend. Question of the day. Models, the Mod Supreme, says the new patch notes mention season resets will change, starting from the What If season, not this season. So basically what that means is people will be losing less ranks the lower rank they are. If you're like rank 53, you're not going to go down to rank 30. You're not going to, at the end of the season, you're going to go stay at rank 53. You are still losing a lot of ranks at the top, but not as many. Why? What are your thoughts in general? Do you think this is intent to combat player interest attrition? So, I don't know why this happened, and I don't love just idly speculating, but I do know something that is worth looking into. About half the players hit Infinite last season that did like 3 or 4 seasons before that. That could be that it got harder to get Infinite. That could be that we had both High Voltage and Sanctum last season. That could be that a lot of players stopped playing. I don't know the reason. I am attempting to look into it as best I can with the resources I have. But, excuse me. But if what they're finding is that a lot of players that are getting dropped down after getting close to Infinite are like stopping playing, or a lot of players like Mired in the 50s are getting frustrated and stopping when they get dropped down to 20 at the start of a new season, this would be a reasonable way to combat that. Gunny T as my favorite hot dog brand, and OSCAR. Yeah, it's Oscar Mayer, I think, is my favorite, although Nathan's is pretty good. And I love a good ballpark Frank. It's worth noting that the best hot dogs in the world, and I get yelled at by this, I got in a fight with Eggs about this once, is Dirty Water hot dogs in New York City. I know that you shouldn't eat them, and I know that I've taken years off my life, but they are ungodly good. One day I'll remember to delete that. My last season infinite list. Certainty of support on our Patreon comes down there. Thanks. Please check out patreon.com/snapjudgments. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you to Fat Nick, our patron of the month, the great Abigail Giesland, Mandatory Burnout, Irregardless, who's always kind, LAB, Inc., I'm Frostman, Hota Navanete, Thinking Poker, Primed Ryan, Ryan Burke, Ryan Wood, Heretics Lee, The King of Questions, Koire, Kazushi, Archangel, 3K, Black Dahlia, Pyrophoros, The Goat Seeker, Hallowed, Only Fox, Synth, Absolute Shannon, Nightmare, Dirty Casual, Mr. Kerfuffle, Cables, Ginger Prime, Philip Rakovich, Haplo, Kenny Loggins of the Danger Zone, The Bizza, Black Jeebus 23, XRC and Skippy G, Jessica Gamble, Slush Death, King of Bros, Great Kazoo, Werewolf, Kepsi Hoda, Lunacris, Clam, Colonel Forbin, Bricks to Click, Rob Silverman, M. Holland, David G. Wingfield, Stephen, Brian Kaufman, Tristan H. Martin, Jason B., Mr. Craig Sterry, Matt V., Renrange, Corbin, Junq, and Jimmy McHugh, You Stout, Ace Sage, One Big Man, Milkman for Reals, Cactus Jack, What's Up Cactus, BG, Quid Pro Joe, Snap Decisions Joe, Mod Supreme Models, Green Goblin, Unibot, Blon 56, The Fuzzy Lot, Spectrumix, Hoot, Ocularis, Matt H, DJ Mikey Hijinks, No Frickin' Flex, Nick the Greek Geek, Zadrex, The King of Canada, Denman Falcon, Father Newman, Jonesy, Two Ties, The Great Laura Devs, Johnny Nine Toes, and of course, Gunny T. The T here stands for see you tomorrow or tonight, one of those T words, either on the stream or in tomorrow morning's top 10 video. Thanks for watching. Much love, everybody. Peace.